see.
I think someone can't hear.
I said, Lisa, that was fantastic. So see, I never heard you that it is so enriching and statement on your faith. Makes me want to find it first. Thank you so much. I love to hear more from you. And if you compose those poems and your talk, I cherish them. Thank you.
Any other thoughts and questions?
I noticed that at one point you were saying that you found your poetry and writing to be kind of dark, or I guess negative for some people. I've kind of found the same thing. I was wondering why you think that is, why people react that way and think like, you are dark just because you write it.
Well, I said that to kind of prepare people, because I think a lot of times when people are writing, they're going to express parts of themselves that most people aren't going to see. And so for me, I'm generally a happy person, but our writing is where I can express other parts of myself. And so I think that people might see writing as dark when it doesn't necessarily end happily, or when it doesn't seem to be positive, but a lot of times that is more shallow, I think, than art that really explores the depths and the problems that are there.
Thoughts, Chris?
I was curious. You had a statement early on in your presentation. If the heart is in the right place, it doesn't matter. What was it? It doesn't matter what the art looks like, or
I just said it doesn't matter what it looks like.
What it looks like?
Any part of our life.
what?
Yes.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit, or maybe do you take that statement artistically?
I do, because I think that like any medium of art, it doesn't matter whether it has words in it or music. I think that when, depending on your heart, what you believe is going to come through the art. And so if I am a Christian and my heart is in the right place, God will be in my art, no matter what form it takes. That's what I know.
Could I ask a second question? A two-fer, if you will. How does that speak to craft? As a fellow artist, I think about this a lot. Is there any difference between poorly crafted art and well-crafted art from two different people with like the same heart for Christ? It's a hard question. I'm just curious what you think.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay, so that'd be that. Let's say there's two people creating, or two poets writing poetry. One of them is T.S. Eliot, a very strong believer who wrote poems that define the 20th century in many ways. And the other is, I don't know, someone that's not T.S. Eliot, but who has an equally strong faith. How do we talk about their art differently? Because clearly one of them has had a huge impact on culture and one of them doesn't. And it's a difficult question, I think, to answer. How do we address that difference if the heart is the same?
I think that God has given us all different talents. And so I think that I can go and, let's say I can go and try and play basketball. And I might have the same heart, but I just don't have the same ability. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I just think that everybody has something in them that God has given them that they can use for His glory. And so for the two poets, I think there is still going to be a difference, and that there is better written poetry that can come from the same heart. But I think that the more poorly written will still glorify God for that person. I don't think that we discount them because they're not as good as somebody else.
Speaking to what Chris said, I think that the purpose of art is to communicate. And so I think high quality art, you would have more impact on other people if you were well, because you're communicating the idea. And if you're a Christian, you're communicating the ideas of God with other people. And I think that would have an impact on them. And if you're you're making low quality art, you probably wouldn't communicate the ideas, but if it's sort of beneficial to you as a Christian, you would be glorifying God, like from an individual standpoint, but other people might not be able to relate as much, just because you're not communicating as effectively. So I think higher levels of art are going to resonate with more people and communicate more.
I'm just interested, Lisa, I don't know if you have a thought on this, but just the whole idea of the risk of art, and you're risking yourself by coming out in front of other people and sharing what's very maybe deeply personal to you, and how maybe also, you're maybe in that Christian environment right now, but that risk of art coming in front of other people and sharing your act of a gift, or maybe it isn't such a great gift to them. So just maybe any thoughts you have on that risk.
I think the risk is one of the most important parts of art, because the people who we recognize that fit into this box of genres are the people who are too sometimes afraid to have their own self come through, and so they try to fit into this mold. And so I think the best art is when people take risks and really expose themselves. As for the comment about this being specifically a Christian audience, we're planning on doing other symposiums that may not be here. So I think when you have to know your audience, and I think I would give a different speech if I was talking to a non-Christian audience, but I would still my speech would still glorify God, and I would relate it to them, because it doesn't really help somebody to talk to somebody as if they were a Christian when they're not. So I look forward to doing that in the future, actually. That's one of the things that I hope we can get out of this format, is to have a place where non-Christians will come and hear good art from Christians. So.
Any last second thought? Yep.
Hi, Lisa. I think in the beginning you touched on one part of art that I've kind of struggled with too as an artist. You mentioned that there's kind of maybe this fear about maybe creating work that's not explicitly Christian if you're a Christian. You kind of shy away from that. I think that's what you were referring to. But for example, we have this whole creation of worship music. And, the Christian artist calls themselves Christian. There's kind of these expectations that they would, create music in this kind of worship music or something blatantly about God. And then if the artist maybe goes in a different direction, is creating music and they're still Christian, but they're creating music that's not blatantly about God, kind of questioned or maybe not accepted as readily or as easily. So I don't know if we're really going that direction, but something that I've struggled with, I wonder if you have any more thoughts about that specific idea?
Sure. For some background, Andy and I have talked a lot about this, and I think there's so much pressure in the Christian community to mold art into a certain direction, like I was talking about before. And I think that that comes from the pressure to please others. So we think that Christians want to see this kind of art, and so we're going to put ourselves into that section. Right at the end, I was talking about the 3 reasons for creating art. And so I think it's more important to please God than to please the Christian community. But I definitely feel the same way, that there's definitely expectations, no matter what community of art you're in, for your art to look a specific way to please people. And so I think that's a very common struggle for artists, and especially in my creative writing class. We didn't really touch on religion at all. It was more like our personal writing, but I definitely felt, I don't know how to describe it, like, not a pressure, but I definitely felt the struggle of how to make art for that audience. We would do workshops, and so somewhere was a poem that I spoke in that workshop, and it was really interesting to hear what these people had to say. They all really appreciated it, and so I think it is definitely very difficult to get away from trying to please other people that your art is going to, and to do it for yourself and then to glorify God. That's very hard.
All right, so that's all the time we have for Lisa. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
First of all, I'm so glad to meet such a talented person who devotes her time and talent in Christianity or to reach more people. That's the purpose of art to begin with. I believe art genuinely is for those that ordinarily they won't be attracted to the subject. But through art, you can communicate with them, you can bring them to surface in a way, and to let them wonder what this art is all about and to follow. But to do that necessarily shouldn't be Christian or others. But if you express yourself through Christianity, and then that's okay. Otherwise, I respect art in any languages, any way a person can express it, either through poem, writing, drawing, speaking, whatever it meant to.